Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about specifically Esper Genesis. Esper Genesis is a brand new tabletop role-playing game. It recently came out last month or two. To my knowledge, it might be out around a little bit more than that. I just recently found it. It is done by Lescouflair, and it's really unique game. So has a lot of unique properties. Okay, so Esper Genesis is a heroic sci-fi setting emulating space opera. So it's heroic sci-fi in a space opera theme. Okay. Now, what's unique about it is it is a completely free tabletop role-playing game. So that is the Esper Genesis basic rules, which actually I think is a misnomer. Their basic rules is 160 pages long, full color, has the races, has the classes. It's a fully functional tabletop role-playing game that has 160 pages of content, full color, beautiful layout, solid art. It's really unique, right? Now, the reality is they're increasingly, and this amazes me all the time, free tabletop role-playing games are not that rare. And I think the reason for that is the market is so saturated that a lot of people create their tabletop role-playing games, think there's going to be a large market, and when they realize there's not a large market, a lot of these are passion projects, and they want people to read them, they want people to play them, and so they make them free, right? Now, but I will say, I've seen a lot of free tabletop role-playing games. To me, the best of them is Fate and Fate Accelerated. It's really, really exceptional. And so, basically, and Esper Genesis gives Fate a run for its money. It really is quite a unique tabletop role-playing game, and the level of quality that you're seeing in a free tabletop role-playing game is very, very high. So I think there's a lot of fun to be had with this game. One of the things I wanted to say about it is 5th edition. It is created specifically to be played with 5th edition. All right, now there's definitely some air quotes around that with 5th edition. Even in the game, there's air quotes around that because it's clearly built to be played with Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. But one of the things, if you're paying attention, you can see all these projects that are built to be played with Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. They have to come at it sideways, right? You can't just say this content is for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. There's the DM's Guild, but even that's starting to get really locked down, and they're starting to, there's some pretty rigid rules on what can be done with 5th edition. So there really isn't just an OGL with 5th edition. There's some permissions that allow you to create some content, but to my knowledge, you cannot just take the 5th edition rules and create a TRPG with them. And that's exactly what you're seeing here with Esper Genesis. They had to be very careful how they worded it, right? So one, it's saying that it's compatible with 5th edition. Now they could say, and it's not saying D&D 5th edition, it's saying 5th edition, right? And they have to be very careful about this because you can't just say this is for D&D 5th edition because that's copyrighted, right? So, but when you say 5th edition, there really is no, everybody knows what 5th edition is, right? So it's a way of getting around it. Also, I looked very carefully at the OGL that's printed in the back of the book. Very, very strange, right? So the OGL at the back of the book is from 2000, the year 2000, which means they're using the OGL from 3rd edition, right? Because that's when that 2000 came out. And so, and it's 1.0, it's 1.00A. And I'm like, what? That's weird, So how they're squeezing this into 5th edition, I'm not sure how they're approaching it. I think that might be one of the reasons why it's free. Because if they went down the road of trying to sell this, it could get a little weird, So, I think there's a lot of people dancing with the copyright with Dungeons and Dragons. That's really not new. A lot of people have done that for a long time. All right, so I'm definitely pointing out this game because as far as a free tabletop role-playing game, this is a download now. And the reason why is it's a lot of content for nothing. And if you have people who are really into sci-fi, this is a cool way to go. And even if you don't, it's definitely worth looking at how these guys approached it and the world they built. Now, okay, so I love that Esper Genesis exists. I really think, and my hat is off to them. Applause for what they accomplished. The layout is truly exceptional. The world is interesting, and the art is surprisingly good. It's all Photoshop. It's all like computer generated art, right? But it's very good. Now, I was really impressed. All right, so that's all the good things I can say about Esper Genesis. I have some serious concerns, and in some ways, this game does make me sad. So here's the thing that really makes me sad about this game. Rich Lescouflair is clearly a creator, and a skilled creator at that. So, you know what? I'm sorry. Let me back up. I want to talk just real quick about specifically what the game is about, right? So it is its own unique world. It has 5 distinct races, right? It's got humans and Eldori and Ashenforged and Prometheans and Kesh, okay? Now, the humans are regular humans. The Ashenforged are exactly like the Warforged, but skinned appropriately for sci-fi. The Eldori are very elf-like, right? The Kesh are really interesting. They're a homeless explorer race, right? And then the Prometheans are uber-humans. Pretty interesting, right? So that's how they populate their world. And that's the species they use to populate this new world, this Esper Genesis world. Also, there is this thing of Esper, which is like essentially like a superpower that can be laid across any of these species, right? It's almost like a mantle of superpowers. It's kind of interesting. There's a lot of genres mixed into this, right? The classes are a little odd. The classes are like engineer, medic, melder, specialist, and warrior, right? And so basically, the classes are, you know, like engineer and medic and warrior. Those are pretty straightforward. Specialist allows you to go into some different directions that the other ones don't. Melder, it's really specific to this specific world. And so that's the races and the classes. I want to get back to talking about what I was before. So here's my issue, right? One, there's definitely some concerns here. One of the biggest concerns I had was when I looked at this, I just saw so much labor poured into the whole of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Right, like I don't understand why people go down this road. So, one, Rich Lescouflair, he really worked hard on this. There was a lot of persistence and a lot of creativity. Actually, there was an amount of creativity. Actually, I think that is one of the issues here. I think there's more productivity here than creativity, and I think that might be an issue. So I definitely have some issues with this. When I look at this and I see this, like really, really well-crafted tabletop role-playing game, a full, functional tabletop role-playing game. When I see, a young creator or, a creator who has, invested all this time and effort, right? I'm like, why are you doing this in somebody else's yard, right? Like, I don't understand why he attached this to 5th edition. And the reason why is, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is awesome. It is the best edition of Dungeons & Dragons that's ever been created. You could buy Dungeons & Dragons for like $150 now. So it's between 120 and 150. I think they're $40 a piece, the books. Maybe they're as 50. 120, 150, right? And then you really have 300 or 400 or 500 hours of play easy, right? And so that's a wonderful game, but it is not the greatest system to run anything in, right? I just don't see. And so to me, if Rich Lescouflair had just taken this system, built his own rule system, right, then this would be completely his, and it would be completely free. But now, right, it's really beholden to WotC, to Wizards of the Coast. And that's really confusing to me, why somebody would take the time to connect their property, to connect all their labor to something that someone else doesn't own, right? To something that they don't own, but that somebody else owns. It just seems like, I look at it and I'm like, how could you be smart enough to build your own world and to create this really well-crafted entire tabletop role-playing game spanning over 160 pages, and yet you're putting it into a place that you don't own, right? And I just didn't get it, right? And it really just seems very problematic to me. I guess the thought might have been, well, a lot of people play 5th, and without a doubt, I think it's arguable more people play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition than every other single tabletop role-playing game combined. But the reality is, I have written a tabletop role-play. I have written one Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition adventure with a group of like 4 other people. It's called Arbor Jade, right? It was incredibly difficult to write. The reason why I wrote it was the group I was connected with at the time really wanted a lot of, they wanted extra content, and I was connected to a writers group, that was connected to that group, and there was just this huge thread. It was going on for literally weeks about, let's write a D&D adventure, and then there was all this just back and forth about how they would write it. No, we should do it this way. No, we should do it this way. And I realized, oh my gosh, this thread is as long as an adventure would be. Let's just write this thing, right? So I did. I just gathered everybody up. I organized the whole thing, and I wrote it. It was 25 to 50. It was like a 20-page 5th edition adventure, right? It was given out for free, right? Just like this game, Esper Genesis, right? It was 25 to 50 hours of my time invested, and there were like 3 or 4 other writers as well. It was an immense amount of time and effort. I couldn't believe how hard it was. So it's hard to create even a single adventure. To create a 160-page TRPG is an immense amount of effort as well. So that's my issue, is like, why would you take all your time and effort and just bolt it onto something that someone else owns? It does not make sense to me. So when I see this, the reason why I am excited about Esper Genesis. It might not sound like I am, but the reason why I'm excited about Esper Genesis is I'm really excited to see what Rich Lescouflair does next, because what he's proven is that he has some good ideas. One of the things I had an issue with Esper Genesis was it did feel kind of generic, and I think that was on purpose, because Rich Lescouflair also did something else, which I think is a mistake, which is he tried to make this an engine that you could use to run anything with, right? Well, that it turns out to be milquetoast, right? If you want to make a game something that can run anything, right, what you end up doing, if you make a universal tabletop role-playing, if you're going to make a universal tabletop role-playing game, awesome. That's a rule system, really, right? Great. Jump in, go to town. That has a lot of value. But don't try to make your specific tabletop role-playing game into something that can be used to run a whole bunch of other stuff. Because then it's not one or the other, right? It's not a universal role-playing game. But then you've mixed in all this material that doesn't belong in your game. And that's one of the things that Esper Genesis does look like. It's got everything. It's got sci-fi. It's got superheroes. It's got fantasy, right? And the reality is, I like Mexican food, and I like Italian food, and I like Greek. But if you throw it all into one bowl, it doesn't make it better, right? And that's what this really looks like to me. It really looks like, he was trying to have this game do too much. However, I really think there's a lot of talent there, and I'm really excited for hopefully Rich Lescouflair decides to say, hey, okay, I get it, right? I'm going to create my own game. It's going to have its own rule set. It's going to be freestanding, and it's just going to be one game, right? Like, this is my vision, right? And I think that could be a really exciting game. So Esper Genesis is not the best tabletop role-playing game I've ever seen, not even remotely. It is free, and it's absolutely worth a download and a read through. I had a lot of fun reading through this. I particularly really liked the Ashen Forged, and I really liked the Kesh. They were really unique, right? I also really liked just seeing like the way they built Nemesises and like all kinds of, just the enemies, right, within the game. And also the gear, the starships, all of it. It's really, really interesting. But what it really does is it's so well crafted that it makes me excited for the next iteration from this creator, right? And so Esper Genesis is really, really interesting game. I would definitely give it a download. I'm really hoping that Rich Lescouflair, decides to create a TRPG that is standing on its own rules engine, right? And the reason why is you can, at that point, you can move forward. Now, I definitely, you can actually jump in and play that thing. It's a freestanding product that is fully that fully rests under the ownership of one creator, right? Because I think right now, the idea, right now there really isn't a clear path to build a TRPG that is Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition that runs on the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. It's really got to come at it sideways, and I think that sideways gets confusing for people, and it's definitely different. So Esper Genesis is really a very, it's absolutely worth the download. It also is just a continuation of this continuing saga of these incredible free tabletop role-playing games. And I'm really excited about free tabletop role-playing games for a whole host of reasons. The biggest one is just for groups that don't have a lot of resources and groups that are playing on, Chromebooks. And if you own a $200 Chromebook, you can own right now and play essentially 20 or 30 different solid, really cool free tabletop role-playing games and never have to put out a penny, and so, if you can scrabble up a set of dice. So Esper Genesis jumps into that group of games. Rich Lescouflair, I think, what Esper Genesis does is it announces the arrival of a strong creator on the scene, and I'm really interested to see what he does next. Take care.